There's one magical, haunted evening each year when all the scary creatures come out to prowl through every neighborhood. But
I put a spell on you. And now you're mine. You can't stop the things I do. I ain't lying.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to our wild Ohio. Today, we will be looking at Halloween, a celebration rooted in nature. The history and original purpose of Halloween, and paying a closer attention to the symbols, can teach us a lot about the origins and its significance in our lives. Celebrating Halloween and its festivals is also a subtle way to teach kids about the yearly cycle of nature and the intimate way we are dependent on this cycle. Take, for example, Halloween. It wasn't until recently that I started to think about the reasons why we carve pumpkins, dress in costumes, and go trick or treating for candy. Turns out all of these symbols have their beginning far back in time, to a time when people believed in and worshipped the power of nature. So regardless of what Halloween has become, usurped by candy and costume sellers, it is a celebration about nature and the eternal cycle of life and death that brings food to our table. As a modern society, we have become estranged from the land that produces our food. But even if we don't recognize it or celebrate it, we are still intimately dependent on nature, the seasons, and land for food. Halloween is a perfect way to remind ourselves and our kids about the cycle of nature and its life-sustaining power. Halloween has its roots deep in time. Its origins can be traced to the Celtic celebration of Samhain, and probably earlier to Greek and Roman celebration of nature goddesses. In its heart, Halloween is a celebration of the bounty of autumn and a preparation for the coming dark days of winter. The carved lanterns and scary masks were used to drive away evil spirits from homes and livestock, so that both people and animals could survive winter. Treats were a way to appease these dark forces and keep them away during the winter months when food was scarce. Carving pumpkins, trick or treating, and wearing scary costumes are some of the time-honored traditions of Halloween. Yet, the Halloween holiday has its roots in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, a pagan religious celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of summer, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor saints. Soon after, All Saints' Day came to incorporate some of the traditions of Samhain. The evening before All Saints' Day was known as All Hallows' Eve, and later, Halloween. Here is a look at the origins of some of the classic Halloween traditions we know today.
People, mostly criminals, are placed in an enormous wicker cage shaped like an animal or giant. The druids set fire to the cage, and the people burned to death. Purified by fire, the souls of the sacrificed make a pleasing gift to the Lord of the Dead.
Carving pumpkins, trick or treating, and wearing scary costumes are some of the time-honored traditions of Halloween. Yet, the Halloween holiday has its roots in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, a pagan religious celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of summer, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor saints. Soon after, All Saints' Day came to incorporate some of the traditions of Samhain. The evening before All Saints' Day was known as All Hallows' Eve, and later, Halloween. Here is a look at the origins of some of the classic Halloween traditions we know today. The tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns, originated in Ireland using turnips instead of pumpkins. It is allegedly based on a legend about a man named Stingy Jack who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven did not want his soul either, so he was forced to wander the earth as a ghost for eternity. The devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal in a carved-out turnip to light his way. Locals eventually began carving scary faces into their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits. The festival of Samhain marked the transition to the new year at the end of the harvest and beginning of the winter. Celtic people believed that during the festival, spirits walked the earth. Later on, Christian missionaries introduced All Souls' Day on November 2nd, which perpetuated the idea of the living coming into contact with the dead around the same time of year. The festival of Samhain marked the transition to the new year at the end of the harvest and beginning of the winter. Celtic people believed that during the festival, spirits walked the earth. Later on, Christian missionaries introduced All Souls' Day on November 2nd, which perpetuated the idea of the living coming into contact with the dead around the same time of year. The traditional Halloween colors of black and orange also traces back to the Celtic festival of Samhain. For the Celts, black represented the death of summer, while the orange symbolized the autumn harvest season. In order to avoid being terrorized by all the evil spirits walking the earth during Samhain, the Celts donned disguises in order to confuse the spirits and be left alone. There is much debate around the origins of trick-or-treating, but generally there are three theories. The first theory suggests that during Samhain, Celtic people would leave food out to appease the spirits traveling the earth at night. Over time, people began to dress as these unearthly beings in exchange for similar offerings of food and drink. The second theory speculates that the candy boon stems from the Scottish practice of guising, which is a secular version of Samhain. During the Middle Ages, generally children and poor adults would collect food and money from local homes in return for prayers for the dead on All Souls' Day. Guisers dropped the prayers in favor of non-religious practices with the inclusion of songs, jokes, and other tricks. A third theory argues that modern American trick-or-treating stems from Belsnickeling, a German-American Christmas tradition where children would dress in costume and then call on their neighbors to see if the adults could guess the identities of the disguised. In one version of the practice, the children were rewarded with food or other treats if no one could identify. The idea of being spooked by black cats dates back to the Middle Ages, when these dark felines were considered a symbol of the devil. It didn't help that centuries later, accused witches were often found to have cats, particularly black ones. People began to believe that the cats were a witch's familiar, supernatural entities that would assist in their practice of dark magic, and black cats and spookiness have been linked ever since. The traditional Halloween colors of black and orange also traces back to the Celtic festival of Samhain. For the Celts, black represented the death of summer, while the orange symbolized the autumn harvest season. The game of bobbing for apples has been a staple at Halloween parties for many years, but its origins are more rooted in love and romance. The game traces back to a courting ritual that was part of a Roman festival honoring Pomona, a goddess of agriculture and abundance. While multiple versions existed, the gist was that young men and women would be able to predict their future relationships based on the game. When the Romans conquered the British Isles in 43 AD, the Pomona festival blended with the similarly timed Samhain, a precursor to Halloween. Playing pranks often varies by region, but the pre-Halloween tradition known as Devil's Night is credited to a different origin depending on the source. Some say that pranks started as part of May Day celebrations, but Samhain, and eventually All Souls' Day, also included good-natured mischief. When Irish and Scottish immigrants came to America, they brought with them the tradition of celebrating Mischief Night as part of Halloween. For much of the early history of Halloween, Towering bonfires were used to light the way for souls seeking the afterlife. These days, lighting candles have generally replaced large traditional blazes. For centuries, people have been coating fruit in syrup as a means of preservation. But during the Roman festival of Pomona, the goddess was often represented by and associated with apples. Her name derives from the Latin word for apple, pomone, and the fruit is at the heart of harvest celebrations. It is believed that candy apples were invented accidentally in 1908 by William W. Kolb, a candy maker in Newark, New Jersey. As the story goes, Kolb was experimenting with red cinnamon candy to sell at Christmas time, and he dipped apples on sticks into the red glaze and put them in his shop window to showcase his new candy. But instead of selling the candies, he ended up selling the apples to customers who thought they looked good enough to eat. They became fashionable treats for Halloween, starting in the early 1900s, and they remained popular up until the 1970s. Bats were likely present at the earliest proto-Halloween celebrations, not just symbolically, but literally. As part of Samhain, Celts lit large bonfires, which attracted insects, which in turn attracted bats. Soon spotting bats became connected with the festival. Medieval folklore expanded upon the eeriness of bats with a number of superstitions built around the belief that bats were harbingers of death. The act of going door to door for handouts has long been a part of Halloween revelries. But until the mid-20th century, the treats children received were not necessarily candy. Things like fruit, nuts, coins, and toys were just as likely to be given out. Trick-or-treating rose in popularity in the 1950s, and it inspired candy companies to market small, individually wrapped candies. People began to favor the confections out of convenience, but candy did not dominate at the exclusion of all other treats until the 1970s, when parents started fearing anything unwrapped. A candy maker at the Wonderly Candy Company in Philadelphia is sometimes credited with inventing the tri-colored candy in the 1880s. But candy corn did not become a widespread sensation until the Golitz Company brought the candy to the masses in 1898. Candy corn was originally called Chicken Feed, and it sold in boxes with the slogan, "Something worth crowing for." Initially, it was just an autumnal candy because of corn's association with harvest time. Candy corn later became Halloween specific when trick-or-treating grew in popularity in the US during the 1950s. Halloween was becoming a pop culture phenomenon, a national festival attended by millions celebrating the joys of scavenging for mass-produced candy. I love Halloween. When I was a kid, I participated in it. I love the rituals of it. I love the pranks of it. I love the mischief of it. I love going to houses and dressing up and getting candy. And then there were parties, and it was just fantastic. Then in 1966, Halloween found a home where all pop culture ultimately goes TV Halloween stature zoomed off the charts when America went trick-or-treating with Charlie Brown.
Dear Great Pumpkin, I'm looking forward to your arrival on Halloween night. I hope you will bring me lots of presents.
Who are you writing to, Linus?
This is the time of year to write to the Great Pumpkin. On Halloween night, the Great Pumpkin rises out of his pumpkin patch and flies through the air with this bag of toys for all the children.
You must be crazy. When are you going to stop believing in something that isn't true?
When you stop believing in that fellow with the red suit and the white beard who goes ho, ho, ho.
Then in 1978, with the classic Halloween. There wasn't really a Halloween-themed film, but it broke new ground, elevating the horror film from B-movie status to respected genre, and completely by accident. The film would also redefine our attitudes about Halloween masks. It started when the wardrobe budget forced the crew to create a mask for the villain, Michael Myers, for next to nothing. Production designer ran up to Burt Wheeler's magic shop on Hollywood Boulevard and bought this, Captain Kirk from Star Trek Mass, which didn't look anything like William Shatner. It just looked strange, this elongated face. It was spray painted and fixed up a little bit. It was distorted, which is perfect. It's kind of written that way in the script, as wearing a face. The bargain basement mask and the villain behind it soon became another Halloween icon. Michael Myers still, even though the original movie came out in 1978, it still remains one of the most popular Halloween characters of all time. This idea of the mask of stalker menacing young people in Halloween, it shifted the focus of Halloween away from ghosts and goblins to human villain. But this nondescript mask did much more than that. It helped to redefine the limits of what a Halloween mask could be. And it ushered in a new face of Halloween, one for a new millennium. Razor blades and apples. Jack-o'-lantern soul cakes. They make up the legends, the texture of the Halloween we know today. Halloween wears many masks. It's a day for adults to push their boundaries a little clearly. A lot of women want to have a very sexy side of them, and it's only on Halloween that they bring it out. Maybe, they could do a little more often. Yet Halloween still remains the domain of kids. When you're a kid, you had one night a year where you were in charge. You got to dress up. You got to be something that you usually weren't. And you kind of even got paid for the privilege of this. It is an amazing holiday. Look close enough, and you will see that Halloween is a showcase of everything the human race fears. Through the centuries, we've learned to live with what scares us most, and now on October 31st, we turn our fears into fire. So beware of haunted houses and creaking doors, pillowing sheets, and full moons. And don't be surprised if a jack-o'-lantern wishes you Happy Halloween.
Thank you for watching our Wild Ohio. Please like and subscribe. Any support is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful day.